Hi, I'm Crystal Lambert, and this is Melanie Myers, and we're instructional designers at the Justice Institute of British Columbia in Vancouver, BC. And we're going to share with you today our venture out of the traditional LMS, the learning management system, to the WordPress platform. In this presentation, we'll explore the pros and cons through a case study, and hopefully hear from you about some of your experiences as well through the chat. So before we get into how we use WordPress, let me provide some context that allows us to use WordPress as a solution. JIBC is a public post-secondary institution that delivers training and education to first responders and other public safety-related fields. We have 6 campuses across BC with approximately 2,300 full-time students and approximately 25,000 students total enrolled across 15 programs. So this is what we might see in a typical office. Because of our focus on experiential learning, live simulations tend to be a large part of our curriculum. So our center, the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Innovation, within the JIBC is a centralized department that works across the Institute, and we're always looking for innovative ways to support our learners, knowing that our learners are learning in the field and outside of the traditional classroom. Not only are they out of the classroom, when they leave us, they end up using these resources when they're in the field. So these resources may include apps or open resources, and we've often chosen open resources because there's a strong push and mandate in our province around making learning open and cost-effective for learners. And you may read that as we have limited funding. So many of you work or attend institutions will be familiar with the functionality of a traditional learning management system, such as Blackboard, Moodle, Canvas, or D2L. For us, it's a constant battle of constraints and functionality. What we find in the traditional LMS is a fairly locked down structure and look and feel. And we are also limited by the plugins, which always come at an extra cost or are not easily implemented, meaning it requires a certain level of technical expertise and support in order to implement these. In our institute, given the limited resources, we like the ability to implement the plugins or technology without needing to go to our tech services department. It makes our workflow a lot easier. And within our department, we have a fairly high technical levels, so it allows us to take on some of the slightly more complex projects and tool implementation in WordPress. We're not, however, in a position to totally abandon our learning management system altogether. There are core features of an LMS that are crucial to our being able to run courses online, including tracking, grading, and assessments. So up until about 3 years ago, we were doing what many of you may be doing, developing online courses in our LMS, perhaps using other learning development tools to create content in, and then publishing it through the LMS. So pretty status quo. But then we had an opportunity to use WordPress, which, as you know, there are an unlimited number of templates and plugins, many of which are free and are similar to the traditional LMS. So for example, a discussion board, the Google Analytics, quiz tool, those flashy slider images you see on many homepages. Our school website is built on Drupal, but WordPress had already emerged in higher education as a platform of choice for developing open resources and courses. And in fact, a few institutions in British Columbia, including our colleagues down the road at the University of British Columbia, were already using WordPress extensively across the campus for courses, blogging, and as a CMS. And they were super willing to share their knowledge with us openly. The support in the community made it an easy choice for us. There were obviously challenges in getting tech services to buy in, as the diffusion of innovation requires this new knowledge, and it's a challenge in our public institute when resources are already stretched to then ask them to take on another project. But within our own department, as I mentioned, we have a certain level of technical skill ourselves. We were able to take on a certain level of the responsibility development, and ownership to ease this burden. So one day, a client approached us about creating an open educational resource. They really wanted the resource freely available to health practitioners around the world. It was the perfect opportunity for us to dive into WordPress. The response from the client and from the users was positive and changed the way we looked at the course design and development. It also opened the door to a new offering for clients that got them very excited. After our initial project was a success, we took on the development of a resource site for rural disaster resiliency planning. It required a great deal of customization and ultimately was a tremendous learning experience for our team. While it's not a course per se, we learned what was involved in customizing WordPress for educational purposes. After these initial projects, it was clear that WordPress was the answer to many of our problems. Gone were the days of the drab-looking courses, and we said hello to simple navigation and ease of use, like here or here. And our clients loved it, but we were still beholden to our LMS for those instances where authentication, tracking, and assessments were required. Enter the world of WordPress LMS Plugins.
Okay, hi there. You've got Melanie now, so hopefully you can hear me okay. So the WordPress gods must have been listening, because right as we were in the midst of creating custom sites to do LMS type of work, a few LMS plugins came on the scene. So namely LearnDash, there was also Sensei and WP Courseware. And now I think there are at least a dozen out there, perhaps more. So through some investigation and vetting, we decided to go with LearnDash. And LearnDash and other LMS plugins are basically tools that allow us to track and record and manage that learner experience and journey through a course and website. So you can use it for a single course or to manage a series of courses, including microlearning. It really allows us to package those courses together. We liked the fact that LearnDash offered core LMS functionality, but wasn't bloated with so many features and restrictions that our institutional LMS sort of made us feel like. So it's not to say that these plugins will remain this way, but that's a piece I guess we could pick up on a little bit later. So we're going to demo a course to sort of guide us through this discussion around LearnDash. So we just put the URL up here, and you can always set up a free account at roadsafetyawork.jabc.ca, and if you want to just try out any of the courses, and maybe you'll learn something too along the way about safe driving practices. But yeah, we're hosted in Canada, and we won't spam you, so it's great if you want to go and try those out. But so we're going to provide you with an overview of some of the features of LearnDash, but we'll show you the front end first, and then we'll go into the back end as well. So yeah, essentially this is the first of a series of courses that we developed using LearnDash. We continue to add to those offerings, and we've also used LearnDash since for a number of other courses. So a client approached us about creating a series of courses around road safety for employers and their workers, and they wanted the courses to be freely available, but also provide the ability in the future for employers to track their workers' progress. This is what you see when you land on the course list page, and we actually customized the look of this page to include these images and course descriptions. And you see that big, huge red arrow and square pointing to the course that we're going to look at, which is winter driving safety. And again, any of these courses are freely accessible. So the template we chose was really based on what would work well with LearnDash, because when we started the development process, we realized that not all templates were going to play nicely with LearnDash. So there was some restriction in terms of look and feel at the outset there. but as you know, I mean, all of the templates are quite customizable, and you can change the look and feel quite easily. So we were pleased with what we ended up with. Here, this screen shows you how LearnDash structures content. So each course has a series of lessons, and then those lessons are further broken into topics. You might refer in your courses right now to lessons as modules, but essentially LearnDash calls these lessons. So in the instructions, that's also where the learners either sign in or log in for an account. And in this case, it's self-registration. So really they just set up an account and they're good to go. And so the point here too was that we just wanted people to log in and have that tracking for their own purposes, because we're not, it's not, none of these are required courses or anything like that. These are just things that people want to track how they're doing throughout the course. So as the learner progresses through the course, each lesson is completed. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's this status that turns to green, essentially, each time they complete one of the lessons. And then if the same occurs at the topic level, so each one of these little green dots appears as you've gone through. And you can see that I've gone through and completed all of those topics within. So for this course as well, we did use the Badge OS plugin. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's one for before, during, and after winter. And so it's when each learner finishes an entire lesson, they would be awarded that badge. So each topic in this course have activities or challenges associated with them. And here you can see there's a few quizzes listed. And the learner would watch a short video scenario and then answer some multiple choice questions, which I think I have an example. Yeah. So this one here is, we created these sort of little animated videos in a tool called Powtoon, and just embedded those videos, and then the questions are right below. So they go through a series of questions based on what they saw in that video. There's all the standard features you'd come to expect of a quiz tool, such as automatic feedback and the display of correct and incorrect responses and so on. You are sort of limited by, I think, somewhat by the look and feel of those questions. But there's the other question types, you know, true and false, fill in the blank, and multi-select, and drag and drop, and so on. We assigned some points to the quizzes, and then at the end, they see the score before they move on. So here's another example of a video quiz that we did, and this one is just a different type of video, but essentially the same idea. And then this is actually from one of a different course, but within the same series there at the road safety site. And we recently started using an open source HTML5 plugin called H5P to create further interactions. And the example you see here is a slideshow type function where the learner clicks through a series of slides to view the content. And this allows us to provide more content on the same screen instead of them having to navigate through several pages. So they can just stay on that topic page and still see more content in between. This one here is another H5P example, and this is an interactive video. So the learner will watch a video, and then at certain places in that video, a question might pop up, or more information might appear. So in this case, it's a multiple choice question that pops up. But if you see at the play bar at the bottom there, that there's some little dots, purple and a green one there. So each time, you know, when they move along and they get to that spot, either the question or the information will pop up. So here's another question type that we used was a text entry question. And the facilitator would have an ability to go in if this was if there was an instructor or facilitator assigned to this, they could go ahead and review those responses. So at this point, just want to refer you to one of the top requests we get with our traditional LMS, and that's to be able to return to the last page or topic visited. So In our traditional LMS, people are working through a module, something comes up or they have to run to class or whatever it is, and they log out and they come back to the course and they're like, they don't know where they left off. So LearnDash allows you to do this. So really LearnDash scores some pretty big points here. You may also be wondering about SCORM compliance. As far as we know, LearnDash does not support SCORM, but they're on board with 10CAN API, but this may or may not be a deal breaker for your institution. This is the learner profile page. So another feature we like here is, again, it comes back to the learner really understanding where they are in the progress of their course, what they have left to do. So then when they come to the screen, they can actually see, okay, well, I haven't quite 100% completed the piece on employee responsibilities, but now I need to go on to the next one. What's the next one? So they can actually click and open where they left off right there. But it does give them progress. So they finish some elements of each of those other pieces, but they have some left to do. So lastly, believe it or not, the second main request we get from people about our LMS is, can you print a certificate? And the answer is, yes, you can. And here's an example of one.
So we're going to move to talking about the back end. And one of the first things I want to mention is templates, because not all templates are supported by LearnDash. On our website, ctli.jibc.ca/WordPress, we have a list of plugins and templates that we have tested to be compatible. But also, we found the LearnDash developers can recommend templates that would work as well. So if you're interested, we always recommend reaching out to the plugin developers. So this is what the backend looks like when you log in as an admin, which is like any WordPress site. There's not really any differentiation. But then when we look down towards the list of plugins, you'll note that LearnDash is one of them. Not a huge number of plugins are needed to get a great site, and this one actually uses about 5 of these. But some sites could have none or 10, doesn't matter. It's another way for us to customize the learner experience or the course management experience. We try to keep it simple because obviously not all plugins play nice with each other. And here I'll mention that when we are developing, we have both a production site and a dev site that we launch at the same time. And we found that we mostly build in production just to help with the content management piece, I guess. But we'll use the development site to test plugins and features to make sure everything is working correctly. And we use the dev site not only during the development phase, but every time there's a new WordPress version or a plugin update or a template update or so on and so on. So in LearnDash, one of the features, as we mentioned earlier, that we really need is the learner tracking. So for this particular winter driving course, this is a sample of the statistics that we get pulled out of LearnDash. So reporting is likely not to be as robust as your traditional LMS, but enhancements are always possible. And we find that realistically with the open courses, we're not looking to undertake in-depth assessment and student tracking. Basically, we want to know where they are in the course and have they completed the activities. Right now, the course site that we were looking at and that Melanie demoed, it has around 1,500 subscribers. And it's been stable to pull tracking reports. And the file reports, as you can see here, to Excel, which we can easily manipulate for analysis. You should note that there are about 4 courses right now on this site, all pulling into this one spreadsheet. And we found that it's super easy to filter and manipulate the data to get what we need, the registration dates, where they're completed and what stage they're at. In terms of authoring, here's what the list of lessons looks like. As you can see, it looks like any post or page list in WordPress, and it functions the same as well. So when you click on one of the title links here, you'll open a lesson in a WYSIWYG editor that also has an HTML view. like any WordPress authoring, editing is easy as writing an email, which is also a really great selling point for subject matter experts who may be editing content and who may be less confident with technology. I can always sell it to them that it's like as easy as writing a Gmail email. So now, having reviewed the front and back end of LearnDash, we're going to talk a little bit about how the tool impacts the design of a course or series of courses.
So as we got started developing with LearnDash, we noticed that our design decisions were being shaped by the tool to some degree. Although the use of LearnDash allowed a greater level of design freedom than with our traditional LMS, as we started to design our courses, we found that we were actually having to adjust certain design decisions based on the constraints of LearnDash. So this was the very thing we were trying to escape by moving away from our LMS in the first place. So these kinds of things were starting to creep back in. So I'll just share some of those things with you. So first of all, as you recall back to that course structure, LearnDash really prescribes the setup of our course structure into lessons and topics, and the navigation through them becomes somewhat fixed to a certain look. Now, I will say that this is actually does save us time in the sense to have this already set up this way for us. So for other courses, even ones that were not requiring authentication, we actually do use LearnDash without that authentication set up, and it just is an easy way to structure our course right away. So there are pros and cons to that, obviously. The templates, only certain ones, as I mentioned before, work well with LearnDash. And then if you're building a series of courses, like the road safety example we've been showing you, you kind of have to use the same template for all of those courses. And you could argue that that's also great because it means that you have a standard look and feel across a series of courses, but there would also be cases where you might want to change that varying, because who the audience might be for each of those courses may not necessarily always be the same people. So the other thing is that there are other quiz plugins that you can use. So the standard LearnDash quiz tool includes that fixed set of question types that we discussed earlier. And those are similar to what you might find in your LMS. There's also something in LearnDash called the Mark Complete button. So it's a kind of a mandatory as part of the design. And it has to be clicked to move between topics if you don't actually put a quiz at the end of the topic. So that was kind of something that we wanted to see disappear. We wanted to set up the other thing is we wanted to set up a series of challenges for learners to complete. And we wanted a feature where they'd be emailed or notified about completing a task. So because the course, especially for winter driving, they're sort of working on that course throughout the before, during, and after winter season. So we were hoping that they would work through the content on that sort of schedule, and we could send them some reminders and personalized email to remind them to go and complete a lesson, or even just send it right through their email and make it easier for them to complete. So similar to when Amazon reminds you that you left a book in your shopping cart. We couldn't really find an existing plugin to do what we wanted. So we tried to have one developed, which ultimately never really worked the way we hoped. But we know it's possible to develop customized plugins, and if time and budget allowed for this, we probably would have explored this further. And it's possible now that there is one out there that exists that would do what we want. As we went through the design process, we continually had to check back to see whether LearnDash would support our design decisions. And part of that was just developing our own familiarity with the tool.
So there are, of course, many benefits to using an LMS plugin such as LearnDash. So the first thing is primarily the cost is significantly more affordable than a full-scale LMS solution. However, we know the LMS isn't going away, so the benefit of having a low-cost alternative to diversify and complement our offerings is really attractive. It's a much easier sell to the institution than suggesting an enterprise-wide solution that costs tens of thousands of dollars. And I just looked it up. LearnDash is available currently for about $300 a year for unlimited users and site licenses. The other thing that we like is that we can control the hosting. So in Canada, and particularly in British Columbia where we're located, we need to ensure that the hosting is located in Canada for student data privacy reasons. So this makes using cloud products very challenging. WordPress affords us the opportunity to implement similar tools, but in a self-hosted manner. So like that H5P that Melanie demoed earlier. Unlike the rather clunky editing of our traditional LMS, where files need to be web dabbed from Dreamweaver up into the server, in LearnDash, like all WordPress, there's super easy editing, automatic version control already built in, and we can assign multiple developers to work on a site at the same time. But the simplicity and ease in editing is actually great from a training point of view, as it doesn't take long for us to train people on authoring. And unlike our traditional LMS, no knowledge of HTML is required. While it's certainly a benefit, it's also certainly not required. And at least at our institution, we're a centralized department touching many of the different program areas. When we launch a new course or program, we want to be able to hand off the course back to its respective department. The maintenance of a course is easily handled by non-technical staff with minimal training. We find it can be much more efficient when a program manager finds something that needs changing, if they can just log in to their WordPress site and make that change on the spot. With our traditional LMS, they submit an email request to us asking for the change, and there's often lots of back and forth with the department making sure that change gets implemented correctly. With WordPress, they just go in and type the change they want. It's very quick and very efficient. We also find that it's just prettier. We can do what we want and make it look like we want, and learners really do love it. We found that WordPress development community as people that we can easily reach out to. And with LearnDash, we've been able to communicate openly with the developer about what we needed to do and the ideas we had. They worked with us to make suggestions, and we made feature requests. And the final thing is that our clients really, really dig it, and it's way more fun. We enjoy having the world of WordPress as our oyster. It's a satisfying way to be able to it's satisfying to be able to execute a client's vision in an elegant and modern way. So where are we heading next? Well, we're looking at integrating our LMS and WordPress, but for authentication purposes, for either for self-registration, or there are a couple of ways to get our learners into the WordPress system. But there might be other applications for this authentication. For example, we're exploring the idea of using WordPress as a program hub where assignments, assessments, and grading occur within the LMS, but the course content and community occurs within WordPress. We're also looking at creating a custom WordPress LMS plugin to further streamline content delivery. We're venturing more into microlearning, and we're exploring what that looks like within the WordPress environment. While the traditional LMS is so big, and WordPress might be heading in that direction potentially, as more people adopt and more requirements need to be met, that turns the LMS plugins more into the LMS that we're trying to move away from. And right now, while we love the agility of LearnDash, we feel that's and we feel that something the traditional LMS is lacking. We are cognizant that this might not always be the case. So while WordPress was what was next for us, we always need to be evolving and monitoring the emerging technologies for what's to come. And at our institution, we don't like to rest on our laurels, so we're looking to the horizon on what the future holds. So that concludes our presentation. Feel free to visit us on our website, ctli.jibc.ca. We'd be really happy to answer any questions anytime if you want to shoot us an email. And then we will answer these questions in the chat, I guess. So have we had any experiences using WordPress as an LMS in a situation that requires accessibility? We are currently, neither of us are currently working on the project. However, we are implementing a project around supporting students with disabilities, and it does require some meeting those accessibility guidelines, but most of our subject matter actually doesn't really require that we meet those accessibility guidelines. So moving with the first responders, so us personally haven't touched those accessibility, but we do have a project that does integrate those. And then, is it possible to add content using H5P within a course topic lesson in Learn-LMS? Yes, totally. We have that implemented in not the winter driving course, but in the road safety course, and a few other courses that we have. And then finally, at which LMS do we use at JIBC? Right now, we're using Blackboard. So that looks like all of the questions. I'm not sure if anyone has anything else. Thank you for having us.